Most people think back pain is just something that gets fixed for them. One of the most common things I see are people doing less and less movement, believing it's the safest way forward. Less bending, less training, less unpredictability. And on the surface, that logic makes complete sense. If something hurts, you protect it, right? But here's the contradiction. The more people try to protect their back by cutting out movement, the more unpredictable and fragile that back often becomes later down the line. And that's the part that doesn't immediately add up. Because if resting and protecting it was actually helping, why does your capacity to do normal daily things still seem to drop in the background? At first, it usually feels like your control is improving. You avoid the exact position that hurt you, you modify how you move, you become incredibly careful, and there's often a short window where things actually feel better. That's the confusing part, because it reinforces the idea in your head, okay, I'm managing this, I'm playing it safe. But then something shifts. You try to return to your normal activity again, maybe you try to go for a walk with the dog, or you sit down for a meal with friends, and it doesn't feel the same. So now your response changes. You don't just modify your movement, you narrow your entire life. You hesitate before doing basic things you never used to think twice about, like bending over to tie your shoes or picking something up off the floor. And this is where the massive emotional shift happens, from confidence to constant doubt. Because now it's not just about the pain, it's about the absolute unpredictability of it. And if you've experienced this, you'll know that the uncertainty of when your back might blow out changes your behavior much faster than the actual physical pain itself. But what's actually driving that shift? That's still unclear at this point. So naturally, you start searching for explanations. Maybe it's tight muscles, maybe it's a weak core, maybe it's bad posture, maybe it's a slipped disc, maybe it's inflammation, maybe it's just sitting too much, or simply getting older. The list will go on. And that all sounds completely reasonable because any of those things can exist in someone with back pain. So you can act on them, you stretch more, you try to strengthen your core, you force yourself to sit up straight, you avoid sitting altogether, you change your entire routine, and that works until it doesn't. Because the truly confusing part is this: two people can do completely different things, one stretches, one does core work, and both still end up in the exact same pattern of restriction. Or someone can do everything completely right and still feel like their confidence in their body is dropping over time. So there is missing variable here, but it's not obvious yet what it is. We'll come back to that. There's something here that doesn't quite line up, right? Why does your back feel completely okay in one context and then totally uncertain in another? And why does that uncertainty sometimes build up even when nothing new has physically happened to your spine? That suggests something else is being updated over time. It's not just the state of your tissues, it's not just the state of your bones. It's something behavioural, it's an adaptive response. Most people think back pain is entirely about something being tight, weak, or physically damaged. But that doesn't fully explain why your symptoms fluctuate based on the situation you're in, how confident you feel, or how much you're protecting yourself. It also doesn't explain why reducing your movement and resting sometimes makes your back more sensitive and not less. What's actually happening is your back isn't weak or broken. Your back is terrified. Your system is adapting its movement strategy over time based on fear. Becomes highly protective when uncertainty increases. It reduces your range of motion the second your confidence drops. And it puts a metaphorical emergency handbrake on your back when your exposure to normal everyday movement decreases. It does this not because it's broken, but because your nervous system is trying to reduce perceived risk. It's forgotten how to handle load, so it locks you down. And this is where everything starts to reorganize around that protection. I remember many years ago when an opportunity came up to tackle a massive outdoor challenge that I'd always dreamed of. Normally it would have been an immediate enthusiastic yes, because I love adventure and I love pushing my body, but I hesitated because I'd been dealing with recurring back pain since I was a teenager. Back when I was a kid playing hockey 4 or 5 times a week, I developed back pain from the endless hours of sitting at school doing desk work, alongside doing all this furious amount of sport during the week, and it gave me a deep and mental physical toll. So when this new adventure came up, the first thing I thought about wasn't the thrill of the challenge, it was my back. I was thinking about the gradual build-up of stiffness, the total uncertainty, the feeling of not knowing how my body would respond the next day, or if I was stuck out there and I was unable to move. I remember thinking, I just don't know if I can commit to this. Not because I didn't want to, but because I just had zero confidence in whether or not my back could really handle what I wanted to push it to do. And that's where something subtle becomes incredibly important. It wasn't just about the physical challenge itself. It was about what I was starting to believe about my own identity. That maybe certain things I used to do as a kid without thinking now came with permanent limits that I just didn't understand. This is where most people start noticing a pattern, not just in how they move, but in the decisions they make every day. I worked with a client named Dougie who went snowboarding every single year. It wasn't just a casual hobby for him, it was a massive part of who he was. He'd fractured his back in a snowboarding accident, and after that, everything changed. Even though surgery helped him initially, the pain and stiffness eventually all returned. Not because anything structural had gone wrong with the surgery, but because his movement confidence was never properly rebuilt. He started avoiding certain movements, then he started missing work, then he cut out normal everyday activity until his whole system became more and more protective, just locking him down. By the time we started working together, Dougie wasn't just dealing with physical pain, he was dealing with the absolute restriction. So we rebuilt his body gradually. We used controlled exposure, simple movements, progressive loading, and definitely nothing aggressive. And over time, his system started to interpret movement safely again. That emergency handbrake came off. The following year, Dougie went back to snowboarding completely pain-free. But this is where it still doesn't fully make sense to most people because nothing structural was fixed in the way people traditionally expect. What changed was how his nervous system responded to the load. Think of a smoke alarm. It's incredibly useful when it reacts to a real fire, but if that alarm becomes way too sensitive, it starts reacting unnecessarily to things that aren't a threat at all, like burnt toast, instead of the actual fire. This is exactly what happens in persistent back pain patterns. Your body isn't broken, your spine isn't collapsing, your system is just over-interpreting certain normal movements as danger, and it's setting off that alarm. Now I want you to try this right now, okay? Stand up and slowly bend forward, but don't rush it. Just notice what happens before you even reach halfway down. Do you move completely freely, or is there a slight hesitation right before you go? Maybe even a subtle automatic tightening of your core or back before the movement even starts. That exact split-second moment is everything, because it shows you how your system is preparing for load and predicting danger before anything physically happens. Most people assume the hesitation means something is wrong, structurally, but it actually points to how your brain is predicting pain based on past experience, rather than reacting to real physical damage. So what do you actually do about this? Well, first, stop treating movement as something to either completely avoid or perfectly protect. Movement is medicine. Second, start noticing just how much your behaviour has changed around daily life over time. Look closely at the hesitation, the over-controlling, and the avoidance patterns. Third, you need to reintroduce movement gradually in a way that allows your brain to realise that it is safe, not randomly, not aggressively, but progressively. Because this isn't about trying to crack or stretch a problem away, it's about rewriting how your body responds to daily life. There's actually a profound shift that happens when you start doing this. Because at first you see yourself as a patient, someone who is just permanently stuck managing back pain. Then you start noticing the behavioural pattern behind how you move, how you react, and what you've been avoiding. And over time, everything changes. You stop monitoring every single step. You stop constantly checking your back for risk, and you start trusting your body again in everyday situations. Not because your spine has suddenly become perfect, but because your system is no longer overprotecting every single decision you make. That is the ultimate shift, from total restriction back to true adaptability. If this resonates with you, the next step isn't trying more random exercises from the internet or guessing what's wrong. It's about breaking out of this relief and relapse loop entirely. To do that, you need a systematic roadmap to rewire the trust, rebuild strength, and restore that function. This is exactly what I do inside the Better Back program. It's a personalized coaching framework designed specifically for busy people who want to stop chasing symptoms, unlock their bodies, and get back to the active life they miss. We focus on real functional milestones, whether that means being able to sit through a long business flight comfortably, completing a weekend hike with your family without fearing the next morning, or finally having the confidence to pick up your child without a single second of hesitation or fear. If you're ready to stop guessing and you want to see if you'd be a good fit to work directly with me to fix the root cause, click the very first link in the description below to apply. Remember, consistency is key, but you can't rush this process.